Thorne Vasquez adjusted the pressure seals on his dive suit, triple-checking the oxygen recycler strapped to his back. The readout glowed a reassuring green against the dim lighting of the submersible bay. Through the reinforced viewing port, the alien ocean of Nereus 7 beckoned, a swirling tapestry of indigo depths punctuated by bioluminescent currents that pulsed like the heartbeat of a living entity. "Final systems check complete," announced Director Rees over the comms. "Vasquez, your vitals look good, but remember protocol. No solo expeditions beyond the mapped quadrants." Thorne suppressed a smile. They always gave the same warnings, and he always nodded along, then promptly followed his instincts once underwater. It wasn't recklessness, it was intuition. 20 years of cynobiology fieldwork had taught him that discoveries rarely came from following the rulebook. "Copy that," he replied, sliding his helmet into place with a satisfying click. Just a routine collection run. Nothing exciting. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Thorne stepped onto the platform. Moments later, he plunged into the embrace of alien waters. Unlike Earth's oceans, Nereus 7 seas felt almost viscous, slightly more resistant than water, yet easier to move through. Scientists termed it semi-aqueous plasma, but Thorne preferred living water. It seemed to respond to his presence, curling around his limbs like a curious child. His descent took him through shoals of translucent creatures resembling inside-out umbrellas, their neural filaments trailing behind them in synchronized patterns. They scattered as he passed, releasing puffs of bioluminescent particles that drifted upward like reverse snowfall. The research directive was simple. Collect samples from the newly discovered coral formations that produced compounds similar to Earth's rare antibiotics. The coral grew in abundance around the supposed natural formations at the edge of the sea canyon, massive stone structures half buried in the seafloor silt. As Thorne approached the site, his breath caught. These weren't natural formations, not by any stretch of scientific imagination. Rising before him stood a complex of structures, curved archways, dome-like buildings, and spiraling towers, all bearing the unmistakable precision of intelligent design. Centuries of marine growth covered the surfaces, but couldn't disguise the architectural intention behind them. "Control, are you seeing this?" he transmitted, adjusting his shoulder camera. Static crackled in response. He was too deep for reliable communication. Thorne hesitated only briefly before swimming toward what appeared to be an entrance, a tall arched doorway flanked by carved pillars. Strange symbols adorned the stonework, partially obscured by luminous algae. He brushed his gloved hand across one symbol, and to his astonishment, it began to glow with a soft azure light. More symbols illuminated in sequence, creating a pathway that led deeper into the structure. The rational part of his mind screamed caution, but the scientist in him couldn't resist. Inside, the complex opened into a vast chamber with a domed ceiling. Shafts of filtered sunlight penetrated through crystal-like apertures, creating dancing patterns across the floor. Unlike the exterior, the interior spaces seemed almost pristine, as if the water itself had preserved them from decay. Thorne moved slowly, documenting everything with his camera. His readings showed the water temperature rising slightly, 2 degrees warmer than outside. Something was generating heat. A sound, part vibration, part melody, rippled through the water. Thorne spun around, his light cutting through the blue dimness. Nothing. He continued forward, entering a smaller chamber filled with what appeared to be artifacts, objects of unknown purpose arranged on stone pedestals. At the center stood a circular platform inlaid with the same glowing symbols he'd seen at the entrance. As he approached it, his suit's sensors detected an energy fluctuation. The water around him seemed to thicken, becoming almost gelatinous. Movement flashed in his peripheral vision, too fast to track. Thorne turned, heart hammering against his ribs. "Hello." The word escaped before he could consider how foolish it was to speak aloud underwater, even through his helmet's external amplifier. The water shifted again, this time behind him. Before he could react, something solid pressed against his back, a presence both powerful and precise. Arms wrapped around his torso with surprising gentleness, and Thorn felt himself immobilized not by violence, but by an embrace so perfectly executed that resistance seemed pointless. Through his suit, he sensed a body pressed against his, humanoid yet distinctly alien. Fingers with slight webbing between them appeared in his field of vision, touching his helmet with evident curiosity. Then, with deliberate slowness, the being moved around to face him. Thorn's breath caught as he found himself staring into eyes of liquid gold, wide, unblinking, and unmistakably intelligent. The creature, no, the person, before him had silvery blue skin that shimmered with bioluminescent patterns. Gill-like structures pulsed gently at the sides of her neck, and her features, while alien, held a haunting beauty that transcended species. She studied him with the calculated patience of a predator, not aggressive, but assessing, evaluating. Then, without warning, she pressed her forehead against his helmet and closed her eyes. A sensation like electricity coursed through Thorn's mind, images, emotions, and concepts flooding his consciousness. One impression came through with crystal clarity. The psychic connection hit Thorn like a tsunami, raw, overwhelming, and impossible to resist. His mind flooded with alien sensations, the taste of deep water currents, the feeling of hunting through midnight waters, and loneliness, centuries of solitude that stretched like an endless abyss. When his vision cleared, the aquatic being still held him firmly, her golden eyes now displaying something between fascination and possessiveness. Her lips didn't move, but her thoughts projected clearly into his consciousness. You come, like the others before, but you different. You hear me. Thorn struggled to organize his thoughts, aware she could likely sense his confusion. I'm Thorn, he managed to transmit through his suit's external speakers. I mean, no harm. I'm a researcher. Her head tilted, gill structures fluttering with interest. She placed her webbed hand against his helmet again, and images flickered through his mind, humanoid figures in ancient diving apparatus, entering these same ruins centuries ago, never returning to the surface. I am Nixera, came the response, the name carrying undertones of concepts untranslatable to human language, something akin to Huntress of the Silent Depths and Last Guardian. She circled him with fluid grace, never releasing her hold completely. Her body seemed designed for perfect hydrodynamics, streamlined yet powerful, covered in patterns that shifted colors like reactive camouflage. What Thorn had initially taken for clothing appeared to be a second skin of biological armor, covering strategic areas of her form. Your people built this place? Thorn asked, gesturing to the ancient structure around them. Nixera's expression darkened, patterns across her skin pulsing with deep crimson. Not build, grow, living stone. Her hand traced a nearby wall, which seemed to respond to her touch by emitting a soft glow. Home city sleeps now. Last cycle ended. I remain. The implication stunned Thorn. Not ruins, dormant technology, and Nixera, potentially the last of her kind. Before he could ask another question, she moved with startling speed, suddenly pressing her palm against a circular indentation on the wall. The chamber hummed with activation, and the platform in the center began to glow brighter. Bond ritual, her thoughts explained as she pulled him firmly toward the platform. You found, you marked, you claimed. Wait, Thorn protested, resistance futile against her strength. I don't understand what's happening. Nixera's response carried impatience tinged with something like desperation. Long alone. Many cycles. Need bond partner, you compatible. As they stepped onto the platform together, the symbols beneath their feet erupted with brilliant blue energy. Water around them charged with microscopic particles that clung to Thorn's suit, seeping through the molecular barriers into his skin. Panic gripped him as his suit integrity indicators flashed warnings. No fear, Nixera projected, wrapping herself more securely around him as the energy field intensified. Changing you. Small only. For water breathing. For mind speaking. Thorn's scientific mind raced through possibilities even as the foreign energy coursed through him. Nanites? Biological agents? Whatever it was, his suit's filtration systems couldn't block it. He felt a burning sensation spread through his lungs and alongside his ribcage. Then, with shocking suddenness, Nixera reached forward and disengaged his helmet seal. Water rushed in. Thorn's survival instinct triggered a desperate struggle, but Nixera held him firmly, her thoughts projecting calm assurance. "Breathe," claimed one. "You can breathe." Against all rational thought, Thorn found himself inhaling. Instead of drowning, the water flowed through newly formed gill structures alongside his ribcage, extracting oxygen with surprising efficiency. The sensation was alien yet oddly natural, like awakening a dormant evolutionary memory. "What did you do to me?" he managed to say, astounded that his voice carried through the water with a resonant quality similar to Nixera's psychic projections. Her expression resembled satisfaction. Bond begun. First gift given. Her webbed fingers traced the new gill slits along his sides. Temporary. Unless completed. The platform beneath them dimmed, the ritual apparently complete, or at least paused. But Nixera maintained her possessive hold, wrapping herself around Thorn in a way that was both protective and restraining. "Surface now," she projected, her tone allowing no argument. "Meet your people. Then return. Complete bond." Before Thorn could process her intentions, Nixera activated something on her armor. A propulsion system engaged, surrounding them both in a bubble of accelerated water. They shot upward through the structure and into open ocean, moving faster than any human swimmer could achieve. As they ascended, Thorn's mind reeled with implications. The scientific discovery alone was monumental, a living alien architecture, possibly a dormant civilization, and a surviving member of its species. But the personal implications terrified him more. Whatever bond Nixera had initiated seemed irrevocable from her perspective. The surface approached rapidly, sunlight fracturing through the waves above. Thorn's oxygen reserve warnings blared uselessly now that he could breathe the water directly. He felt Nixera's thoughts brush against his consciousness again, possessive yet somehow tender. "Long watched your kind. Many cycles. Studied. Waited for a compatible one. You called to me." "I didn't call anyone," Thorn protested, struggling to adjust to this new reality. Nixera's mental voice carried something like amusement. "Not with words. With essence. Spirit pattern matches ancient protocol. Destined." As they broke the surface near the research vessel, alarms immediately sounded. Thorn could see figures rushing to the observation deck, pointing in shock at the sight of him entangled with a clearly non-human entity. Nixera's grip tightened as she sensed his apprehension. Her golden eyes locked with his, projecting a silent warning. "I claimed. I keep." Chaos erupted across the deck of the research vessel Helios as Thorn and Nixera were hauled aboard by the emergency retrieval system. Security personnel formed a defensive perimeter, their pulse rifles trained on the alien being who refused to release her hold on the marine biologist. "Stand down," Thorn shouted, struggling to his feet with Nixera still wrapped protectively around him. Water cascaded from his suit, pooling on the deck plates. "She's non-hostile." Director Rees pushed through the gathered crew, her expression oscillating between scientific fascination and horror. "Vasquez, your Jills. What happened to you down there?" Her hand reached toward the new respiratory structures visible along his ribcage. Nixera hissed, a sound blending biological threat with something almost mechanical. Her skin flashed warning patterns of crimson and electric blue. "No touch," claimed one, her thoughts pressed into Thorn's mind with such intensity that he winced. "She's telepathic," he explained to the bewildered crew, "and very protective. Lower your weapons. They're just provoking her." Chief Security Officer Blackwood stepped forward, his rifle still raised. With all due respect, Dr. Vasquez, this entity has clearly altered your physiology without consent. Protocol dictates. Protocol can wait. Thorne interrupted. We're dealing with potentially the last survivor of an advanced aquatic civilization, one that predates human spaceflight by millennia. Nyxura's webbed fingers traced possessive patterns across his shoulder as her golden eyes scanned the assembled humans with predatory assessment. Thorne could feel her categorizing threats, identifying weaknesses, planning escape routes, all with frightening efficiency. Everyone back, ordered Director Rees, recognizing the volatile situation. Vasquez, Isolation Chamber 3. We need to debrief and run medical scans. Nyxura's thoughts flared with instant rejection. No separate. No cage. Thorne felt her muscles tensing, preparing for conflict. That won't work, he said quickly. The bond she initiated, it's not just symbolic. There's a physiological component. Separation might be dangerous for both of us, or the greatest threat, Blackwood countered. What if this claiming is just the first step in some parasitic relationship? Or worse, what if she's using you as a test subject before targeting the rest of humanity? Nyxura's skin rippled with patterns of deep violet, an emotion Thorne couldn't interpret. Her thoughts touched his mind more gently now. Show them. Memory sharing. Truth. Understanding her intent, Thorne nodded. She wants to communicate directly, to share her memories. The senior staff exchanged uneasy glances before Director Rees finally nodded. Proceed. But at the first sign of danger, Blackwood's team will intervene. Nyxura positioned herself behind Thorne, her arms encircling him in what was becoming a familiar embrace. Her forehead pressed against the back of his neck, and suddenly the laboratory disappeared from his perception. Instead, Thorne found himself experiencing flashes of Nyxura's past, swimming through a vast underwater city, teeming with beings like her, participating in elaborate hunting rituals, witnessing the slow decline of her civilization as some unknown calamity poisoned their waters. He felt her centuries of solitude as the last guardian of dormant knowledge, waiting for compatible beings who might help awaken her people from their enforced stasis. When the vision cleared, Thorne realized he was projecting these images to the others. Somehow, through their bond, he had become a conduit for Nyxura's memories. She's not the last, he explained, his voice hoarse with emotion. The others entered suspended animation when their environment became uninhabitable. She remained awake as guardian. For centuries, she's been waiting for someone who could help revive her civilization. And she chose you, Dr. Wade said, the implication hanging heavy in the air. Nyxura's thoughts confirmed it. Thorne pattern compatible. Ancient protocols recognized. Bonded pair can access revival systems. But why the physiological changes? Director Rees pressed. Thorne felt Nyxura's answer form in his mind before she projected it. Human form insufficient for deep protocols. Need adaptation. Bond creates bridge between species. As this explanation settled over the room, the ship's alarm suddenly blared. Lieutenant Park burst into the laboratory, breathless. Director, long-range sensors have detected an unregistered vessel approaching at high velocity. They're not responding to hails and their weapons systems are active. Nyxura's body tensed against Thorne's back, her skin flashing with patterns of alarm. Her thoughts carried urgent warning. They come. Hunters of knowledge. Seekers of forgotten technology. They followed you. The unregistered vessel maintained its aggressive approach, ignoring all communication attempts from the Helios. Director Rees ordered emergency protocols, but Thorne could tell from her expression that their research vessel stood little chance against a militarized craft. We need to return to the water, Thorne said decisively, feeling Nyxura's urgent agreement pulsing through their bond. Whatever they want, it's connected to the underwater city. We might find defenses there. Blackwood objected immediately. That's exactly what she wants, to isolate you further from human influence. Nyxara's thoughts flared with indignation. Not isolate, protect. City defenses active only with bonded pair. She's right, Thorn insisted. I've seen fragments of our memories. The city has defensive capabilities, but they require both of us to activate them. Director Rees studied them for a long moment before nodding. Take the auxiliary submersible. Park, Wade. Go with them. Document everything. We'll try to buy you time up here. As they hurried toward the submersible bay, Thorn felt Nyxara's growing agitation. The confined spaces of the ship clearly distressed her, and the prospect of entering a human vessel instead of swimming freely seemed to trigger ancient instincts. Small metal shell. Trap. Dangerous, her thoughts projected, patterns of stress rippling across her silvery blue skin. Thorn took her webbed hands in his. It's faster than swimming. We need speed now. Dr. Wade approached cautiously with an environmental suit modified to accommodate Thorn's new gill structures. The submersible can't flood completely. You'll need this for the journey. Nyxara watched with suspicious golden eyes as Thorn donned the suit, her thoughts probing his for reassurance that this wasn't some trick to separate them. Only when he extended his hand to her did she reluctantly enter the small craft. Nyxara watched with suspicious golden eyes as Thorn donned the suit, her thoughts probing his for reassurance that this wasn't some trick to separate them. Only when he extended his hand to her did she reluctantly enter the small craft. The descent was rapid, with Lieutenant Park piloting while Dr. Wade monitored Thorn's increasingly hybrid physiology. Nyxara remained coiled beside him in the cramped space, her body language broadcasting clear discomfort. As they approached the underwater city, Nyxara suddenly pressed her palm against the submersible's viewport. Her skin illuminated with complex patterns that seemed to communicate with the structures below. The previously dormant city began awakening, buildings lighting up in sequence, pathways clearing of marine growth, and massive defense arrays rising from the seafloor. My God, whispered Wade, recording frantically. It's responding to her. Park guided the submersible toward the central dome that Thorn had partially explored earlier. As they approached, a section of the structure opened like an iris, revealing a docking chamber filled with air rather than water. How is that possible? Park marveled as they entered. The pressure differential should collapse any air pocket at this depth. Living technology, Nyxara explained as the chamber sealed behind them. Membrane separates elements, allows both kinds to exist. When they disembarked, Thorn realized why Nyxara had brought them here. The chamber's walls displayed holographic projections of the ocean above, showing both the Helios and the approaching hostile vessel, now identified as a private military contractor ship bearing the insignia of Zenith Extraction Corporation. Resource pirates, Park spat. They must have detected the energy signatures when you activated the bonding platform. Nyxara led them deeper into the complex, moving with growing confidence through corridors that responded to her presence. Thorn felt her excitement building through their bond. After centuries of solitude, she was finally fulfilling her purpose as guardian. They entered a vast spherical chamber with a platform at its center similar to the bonding altar, but much larger. Surrounding it stood 7 crystalline containers, each housing a suspended aquatic being similar to Nyxara, but with distinct variations in coloration and physical features. My kin, she projected, emotions of reverence and hope washing through the bond. Last council of Nereidian civilization, in deep sleep until waters purify. They're alive? Wade asked, approaching one container with professional curiosity. Between state, not alive. Not dead, waiting. Nyxara guided Thorn toward the central platform. Memory chamber first. Before awakening, you must understand. As they stepped onto the platform together, Thorn felt the now familiar sensation of energy flowing between them, but stronger this time. The chamber darkened, then illuminated with 3-dimensional projections of Nereus 7 as it had existed millennia ago. The planet's oceans teemed with Nereidian cities, vast underwater metropolises built from the same living architecture. Thorn watched through Nyxara's ancestral memories as her civilization reached its zenith, developing harmonious technologies that worked with planetary systems rather than exploiting them. Then came the visitors, the first human explorers, arriving in primitive vessels. The memories showed peaceful initial contact, cultural exchange, and eventually, betrayal. Human corporations discovered the value of Nereidian biotechnology and attempted to extract it forcibly. In the ensuing conflict, humans released experimental weapons into the ocean. Biological agents designed to kill the Nereidians but leave their technology intact. The poison spread rapidly through the waters, forcing the surviving Nereidians into suspended animation, while a select few Guardians remained awake to maintain the stasis systems and wait for compatible allies who might help restore their world. Last Guardian, Nyxara projected, her grief palpable as the memories ended. Others faded. I remained. The platform deactivated, leaving them in stunned silence until Wade spoke. Those corporate ships, they wore Zenith insignia even back then. The predecessor company, Park realized, they've been hunting this technology for generations. A tremor shook the structure, and the holographic display showed the Zenith vessel firing upon the Helios. The research ship shields were failing rapidly. Nyxara pulled Thorn toward another console. Defenses require bonded pair, human insight. Nereidian execution. Understanding flooded through Thorn as he placed his hands alongside Nyxara's on the living controls. Their minds synchronized through the bond, allowing him to interpret the alien interfaces while she channeled the necessary energy patterns. The city has non-lethal defensive capabilities, Thorn explained to the others as he worked. We can disable the Zenith ship without destroying it. Another impact rocked the structure as the Zenith forces began targeting the underwater city directly, having realized its significance. Park checked the tactical display. The Helios is taking heavy damage. They can't hold out much longer. Thorn felt Nyxara's determination hardening through their bond. Together, they activated the city's primary defense system, a massive electromagnetic pulse specifically calibrated to disable artificial systems while preserving biological life. On the displays, they watched as the pulse expanded outward from the city in concentric rings. When it reached the Zenith vessel, the ship went dark immediately, its weapons and propulsion systems failing. Unfortunately, the Helios suffered the same fate, though as a research vessel, it had better emergency systems. Done, Nyxara projected, satisfaction evident in her thoughts. Threat contained. But Thorn sensed something more in her mind, a growing purpose that extended beyond immediate safety. You want to revive them, he said, understanding suddenly. Your people. You think the waters are clean enough now? Nyxara's golden eyes met his, vulnerability showing for the first time. Need your help. Bond complete first, then awakening possible. What does completing the bond entail? Wade asked cautiously. Before Nyxara could answer, the structure shook violently. On the displays, they could see armored figures emerging from the disabled Zenith ship, using personal propulsion systems to descend toward the city. Persistent hunters, Nyxara projected, her skin darkening with determination as she pulled Thorn toward the stasis chambers containing her kin. Must complete bond now. Only way to save all.